Lesson this morning comes from Luke chapter 24, verses 13 through 35. This is after the morning when the women have been to the tomb and found it empty. Now on that same day, two of them were going to a village called Emmaus, about 7 miles from Jerusalem, and talking with each other about all these things that had happened. While they were talking and discussing, Jesus himself came near and went with them, but their eyes were kept from recognizing him. And he said to them, "What are you discussing with each other while you walk along?" They stood still, looking sad. Then one of them, whose name was Cleopas, answered him, "Are you the only stranger in Jerusalem who does not know the things that have taken place there in these days?" He asked them, "What things?" And they replied, "The things about Jesus of Nazareth, who was a prophet, mighty in deed and word before God and all the people, and how our chief priests and leaders handed him over to be condemned to death and crucified him. But we had hoped that he was the one to redeem Israel. Yes, and besides all this, it is now the 3rd day since these things took place. Moreover, some women of our group astounded us. They were at the tomb early this morning, and when they did not find his body there, they came back and told us that they had indeed seen a vision of angels who said that he was alive. Some of those who were with us went to the tomb and found it just as the women had said, but they did not see him." Then he said to them, "Oh, how foolish you are, and how slow of heart to believe all that the prophets have declared. Was it not necessary that the Messiah should suffer these things and then enter into his glory?" Then, beginning with Moses and all the prophets, he interpreted to them the things about himself in all the scriptures. As they came near the village to which they were going, he walked ahead as if he were going on, but they urged him strongly, saying, "Stay with us, because it is almost evening and the day is now nearly over." So he went in to stay with them. When he was at the table with them, he took bread, blessed and broke it, and gave it to them. Then their eyes were opened, and they recognized him, and he vanished from their sight. They said to each other, "Were not our hearts burning within us while he was talking to us on the road, while he was opening the scriptures to us?" That same hour they got up and returned to Jerusalem, and they found the 11 and their companions gathered together. They were saying, "The Lord has risen indeed, and he has appeared to Simon." Then they told what had happened on the road, and how he had been made known to them in the breaking of the bread. Here ends the reading of God's holy word. May God add many blessings to the hearing of it. The grass withers and the flowers fade, but the word of the Lord endures forever. Amen. I have a friend who is 3 years old, and we went for a walk a couple of weeks ago, and instead of falling asleep in his stroller like he normally does, he stayed awake while we walked. So while we walked, we talked and we played. His favorite television show is currently Jake and the Neverland Pirates. So that is what we played. His book became the map, and he became the pirate Jake. I became the sidekick Cubby, and his mom became the sidekick Izzy. When Jake consulted the map, it told us to look for frogs. And so we did. And we found lots of birds and snails, but no frogs. Our game continued for almost an hour. And after we finally found a flattened frog on the road, Jake consulted the map again and declared, "It says to look for fish." It was a magnificent game of pretend that caused us to look carefully at our surroundings. And it allowed us to inhabit a space that at the same time existed and didn't really exist. Cleopas and his companion were out for a walk also. They were walking to Emmaus. And I doubt that you could find two people more burdened than those two were that day. They were too burdened with worry and with fear, with confusion, to notice the holy in their midst. I wish that they had been playing a game of pretend, just like the pirate Jake and I did on our walk. Cleopas and his friend would have benefited from playing pretend. They could have pretended that life would return to normal, or even pretended that there was a dream of some new normal. They could have been pretending that hope was still to be found. We often play games of pretend, and sometimes the games that we play help us to get through a day or a week or a year. We pretend that our burdens are different, that our families don't do things that cause us pain. We pretend that we have everything under control. We pretend that we are happier than we really are. Or we pretend that everything is going our way. Now, pretending, some may tell you, is a game for children. But pretending is also a way of coping with our lives, and pretending can help us to change our realities. Now, in playing pretend with my young pirate friend, we became more aware of our surroundings. We were noticing the details that we may have missed without our game. We saw flowers. We saw the wind blowing the leaves in the trees. We saw birds on the map and along the road. We saw snails and poison ivy. We saw a creek full of muddy water, and we saw the sunshine break through the clouds to warm our skin. Cleopas and his companion on the road to Emmaus wore their sadness like a cloak, and their eyes were closed to what was happening around them. The women had come from the tomb and told them it was empty. They had reported of angels proclaiming that Jesus was alive. But in their sadness, Cleopas and his companion remained foolish and slow of heart. They didn't perceive the truth that the scriptures had told. If only they could have played pretend. I wonder what they would have seen if they had been able to open their eyes to their surroundings. In the movie Hook, Peter Banning is a high-powered attorney who's too busy to watch his son's championship baseball game and his daughter's school play. His phone calls were more important than time with his wife and children. His was a life that was full of deadlines and meetings and phone calls and stress. And it took a vacation to the place where he had grown up, a kidnapping, and time spent under the care of a group of wild children before his atrophied imagination could regenerate. But when that happened, he noticed the world around him and was able to see the sacred spaces again. Cleopas and his companion needed to employ their imagination. They needed to play pretend in order to see the new reality around them. And it took the breaking of bread for them to wake up and be able to see. Frederick Buechner wrote, "The Lord's Supper is make-believe. You make believe that the one who breaks the bread and blesses the wine is not the plump parson who smells of aqua velva, but Jesus of Nazareth. You make believe that the tasteless wafer and the cheap port are really his flesh and blood. You make believe that by swallowing them, you are swallowing his life into your life, and that there is nothing in heaven or on earth that is more important than that you do this. It is a game you play because he said to play it. Do this in remembrance of me. Do this. Play that it makes a difference. Play that it makes sense. If it seems a childish thing to do it in remembrance that you are a child. Do this. So why do we do this thing we do when we gather around the table? Because Jesus told us to. Because we are opening our minds and our lives to a new imagined reality. A reality where we can notice the holy around us. So later, when you walk toward the table, do so imagining that you are walking toward Emmaus and having the scriptures opened for you. When you approach the table, open your eyes to see Jesus tearing you a piece of bread and offering it to you as a way of life. When you take the cup, recognize that this is the blood of Christ willingly shed for you, so that you can imagine a world where the sacred and the ordinary intertwine. Whenever you share this meal, pretend that you are sharing it with your family from generations past and with people across the ocean. Sharing this meal, pretend that you are on the holy mountain of God, with a banquet feast of eternity spread out before you. Play that there are no tears, that there are no burdens. When you come to this table, play pretend as a way of believing. And play pretend to open your eyes to the possibilities. May it be so. Amen.